Hello everybody, I'm Krasi, and today is a very important day because tomorrow we will have the beginning of the astronomical new year. So tomorrow, according to the most ancient tradition, we will see the first lunar crescent, which appears before the sun enters the degree of the spring equinox, which is approximately the 5th degrees of Pisces. So, according to the most ancient tradition, which would be older than 7,000 years, the ancients would look at the first lunar crescent, which would appear before the sun enters the equinox. And this day was the holiest day of the year, and it was called the Akitu. Actually, these were 12 subsequent days, 12, see the number 12, 12 subsequent days when the ancients would celebrate the holiest of the holiest festivals, and this was the Akitu festival. Now, just very briefly to tell you that if we would follow a bit more recent, not really recent, but a bit more recent tradition, the one of the Babylonians, then we would say that the new year astronomically would begin with the first lunar crescent after the sun enters the degree of the equinox. So I am very attached to the most ancient traditions. Therefore, my personal choice is tomorrow, on 8th of March, to welcome the first lunar crescent. And to me, this is the beginning of the new year. What actually this means, the energies are very powerful because everything happens around the degrees of the equinox, of the spring equinox. We have knowledge for these particular festivals, the Akitu festivals of the ancients, from the Epic of Creation, Enuma Elish of Babylon. We found there are many versions of the Epic of Creation, which is dated from ancient Sumerian times, and also from the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the two twins, the great twins, the Gemini, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, would talk about the Akitu festival. But the Gilgamesh, one of the two twins, who is the star Pollux on the sky. On the sky we have two stars which are representing the two Gemini, the two great twins on the sky, and these are Pollux and Castor. So Pollux, who was the king, is saying that he would come back. He's saying to his mother he would come back to celebrate two Akitu festivals, which is the second Akitu festival. The most important one, the New Year festival, which would be celebrated, as I told you, 12 days, and where the main participants will be the gods and the king, is the one, the first of Nisan, the month of Nisanu, the first month of the year. So officially, the year begins tomorrow, and the first month of the year, the first lunar month of the solar lunar calendar of the ancients, would be the month of Nisanu. What is happening next? Next, when we see the first lunar crescent before the sun enters the degrees of the autumn equinox, we are having the beginning of the month Tishrit. So this is another time when the ancients would celebrate Akitu festival. Also very important. Such importance was given to this festival that they would look, the priests, the high priests would make ritual cleaning, ritual bath, and in the morning of Babylon, here I'm talking already about the Babylonian times, Akkadian times, when the Akkadians would take over Babylon and would take the script, the symbolic, the cuneiform writing of the Sumerians, but then they would use their own words, but would adapt the cuneiform writing of the Sumerians. So the Akkadians would then have the Akitu festival taking place in Babylon. And imagine Babylon, which is now the contemporary Iraq, was the city of Marduk. And who is Marduk? This is the god, the divinity, which was the patron divinity, the patron divinity of Babylon, and which was Jupiter, ruling the planet Jupiter. So all gods, according to the ancient texts, would come into Babylon to celebrate the Akitu festival. And the high priests and would enter the temple of Marduk. First would do all these 12 days, would do ritual washing, and would celebrate and would give respect to the gods. They would do incantations, they would do rites. All the city would celebrate the Akitu festivals. But most importantly, they would climb on the ziggurats. Ziggurats are those towers in the temples where they would look at the sky and would search for ominous phenomena. For example, they would look at the appearance of the first lunar crescent on the 1st of Nisanu, which is tomorrow. And based on this, they will know how the year would look like. Imagine if, for example, there would be an omen that would endanger the king, then they would, of course, make later on rituals which would be to save the destiny of the doomed king, for example. So there are a lot of ominous texts on cuneiform. Some, of course, many of them are translated. But what is important to know in order to make use of these days? First of all, we can, based on the knowledge we have from the ancients, we can benefit from this first in order to predict how the whole year will look like, because the beginning of every cycle is determining how the whole cycle will look like. So we look at the sky tomorrow, and my prognosis, the annual prognosis which I made for the year 2019, took this into consideration. I made such prognosis on my YouTube channel, therefore I will not give attention now to prognostics. I'm just, the aim of my brief talk now is just to show you how to benefit from this particular day, and actually from the 12 days after. So we are going to have very powerful 12 days energies, like more powerful will be the day tomorrow, the first lunar crescent. How? Well, certainly, if we think what the high priests did in ancient Babylon, they would take ritual bath, and then they would pray. They would do on different, of course, spiritual, religious rituals. We do not need to be religious, but we can be spiritual. We can use these powerful energies for our benefit, connecting with our higher selves, meditate, enhance our intuition, ask favors, and we have wishes from the universe. So this way we can benefit. Another very important point is that around this date, the herbs are very powerful. So if the climate allows, and if in your area the herbs are already growing, you can gather again ritually on appropriate timing, but around this day herbs from which later on you can benefit. Now, why am I saying ritually? Because we are not allowed to take anything from nature just like this, like going and stealing it. In ancient Babylon, I would tell you, and I have separate video on this on herbalism, you can see that they would gather herbs, like they would gather the herb with the roots, but they would replace it with a seed or with another root, and they would do it with a prayer, and they would ask the gods for permission, explaining what is the purpose of gathering this herb. So this is very, very important. The more we obey the universal laws, I'm not talking about religious here, I'm talking about spirituality and how to connect with the nature, the better we will live. And one of the purposes of the Akitu festivals and the obeying of the gods was exactly this, to connect with the nature, because this is what people did. They would do spiritual rituals, they would pray, they would stay in the temple. I will not go into detail to explain how the rituals went, because this will not be applicable today. They made crazy rituals, like ritual called sacred marriage of Inanna, repeating the marriage of Inanna and Dumuzi and so on, but this is not really applicable for our time, and it has strange mythological explanation. However, we can benefit from these energies. Later on, when the moon will appear before the sun enters the autumn equinox, we will have the beginning of the month Tishrit. And this month is also very key month, because again, on this particular moment, we can see the sky, see the chart of the day, and then we will know how the next 6 months of the solar lunar year will look us. So if you're an astrologer, make a chart of tomorrow's appearance of the lunar crescent for your particular area. Or also something very interesting I will tell you, very important to see is the degree of the appearance of this lunar crescent, and see how this applies on your personal chart, in which house, and then you will see which particular place of your chart will be emphasized for the year. So this way you can also predict how your year will look like, along, of course, with the mundane observation or description of the year to come. So make use of the tomorrow's energies for good, for white, pure ritual. Let your intuition lead you how to do this, what kind of wishes to make to the universe. Now, it is, I told you that the high priests would make purification ritual. They would make purifying washing before entering in the morning, before sunrise. They would enter the temple of Marduk, and then they would give their tribute to the gods. And then you would, in the text they say that the gods from the other cities of Mesopotamia will also come to Babylon, because at that time Babylon was like the center of the world. It was like now to say, for example, New York, something like this. This was Babylon, it was Iraq. So, and then on the 12th day, when the Akitu festivals would end up, the gods will leave and they would go to their own cities, which they rule, where they're patrons, so to say. So make use beautifully of tomorrow's energies. Also, in terms of agriculture, tomorrow, especially this particular first week after we see the first lunar crescent, is a wonderful time for planting your seeds, because this is just the beginning of a wonderful period. So enjoy and happy new astronomical year from me. And just before I finish, if you miss tomorrow's moon, the whole week will have the powerful energy. So don't worry, do your prayers later on, or do ritual prayers, or meditate, enhance your intuition through the 12 days of the Akitu festivals, like the ancients did. You may also benefit from this if you desire to follow the Babylonian and not the Sumerian tradition, which would be, I think, on the 6th of April, we would see the first lunar crescent after the sun enters the spring equinox. So if you desire to follow this particular tradition, this is also wonderful. I'm personally very attached to the most ancient roots, so therefore I am explaining you about this particular day. So all the best.